Welcome to Great Historical Performances by Chamber Singers of Iowa City in Iowa City, Iowa. I'm David Puderbaugh, music director and your host for this performance. During the COVID-19 pandemic, while we are unable to experience the thrill of live performance, we are highlighting and presenting some of the notable concerts of CSIC's proud 50-year history. In addition to reliving these performances, we talk with those who were there, performers, audience members, highlighting the people and illuminating the personal stories that are the foundation of every rehearsal and concert of CSIC. So, sit back in your easy chair and enjoy some great music from the friends and family members who sing in Chamber Singers of Iowa City. Hello, and welcome to the second installment of Great Historical Performances by Chamber Singers of Iowa City. My name is David Puderbaugh, music director of CSIC. Our 50th anniversary season has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So in its place, CSIC is providing its loyal and wonderful supporters with these notable recorded performances of the past 50 years. This time, we are highlighting the November 23rd, 2008 performance of Rachmaninov's All-Night Vigil, also known as the Vespers, sung in the original Church Slavonic. The concert took place on November 23rd, 2008 at First Presbyterian Church on Rochester Avenue in Iowa City, Iowa, to a standing room only audience. It remains one of the most indelible musical moments of my time as music director of Chamber Singers, and I am delighted to share it here with you. For this presentation, we have three special guests who will give us their unique perspectives on the performance as well as the choir. Lynn McMorris is a former longtime singer of Chamber Singers of Iowa City and shares her memories of the concert and her longtime singing in the choir. Lynn's husband, Mel, did not sing in the choir, but he served on the board and was the head of our front of house for many years, attending to the needs of our wonderful patrons at our performances. He shares his recollections of the performance, but it's from a different angle. Although there was no intermission when we performed this piece, we performed the Vespers straight through from beginning to end. We will take a break, however, about halfway through this performance, in order to talk to yet another chamber singer who was there that day. Michala Martin is a current singer in the soprano section, and the Rachmaninov concert was her first with CSIC. These perspectives give this presentation a human face, and it is the human element and interpersonal connections that are at the core of the success of Chamber Singers of Iowa City for 50 years. Please note the timestamps in the description box below this video. These are going to allow you to jump around if you would like, as much as you would want, in case, for instance, you want to hear the Rachmaninov as we originally performed it without break, or to listen to the interviews, perhaps, back to back. Now, before I get to our guests, let me first set the stage for this performance and talk to you a bit about the repertoire that was performed that day. The concert began actually with a rare example of Russian organ music, Alexander Glazunov's Fantasy, Opus 110, played by Linda Hacken on the church's Phelps organ. Alexander Glazunov was born in St. Petersburg in 1865, and he studied composition with none other than Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. His compositional techniques reflect the traditions represented by other composers such as Borodin, Glinka, and Tchaikovsky. Glazunov composed 9 symphonies, like Beethoven, ballets, orchestral suites, concertos, piano music, and vocal works. His organ works, of which there were only 3, reveal the characteristic traits of the Russian symphonic style: monumentality, epic breadth, reflection of folk music, and mastery of counterpoint. Fantasy is one of his last compositions. It was written in Paris in 1935 and dedicated to Marcel Dupré. Glazunov based his composition on the melody of the Catholic chant Dies Irae, developing the piece in this epic symphonic style from the Russian school. The main motif is developed and transformed several times throughout the opening section, and a hymn-like chorale concludes the work. After that piece, by the organ, from the choir loft in the back of the church at First Presbyterian, the singers of CSIC processed to the front steps of the sanctuary in order to perform the Vespers. Sergei Rachmaninov was perhaps better known in his lifetime as a professional pianist, a composer of piano, orchestral, and other instrumental works. Born into a wealthy family that later lost its fortune, Rachmaninov studied first at the St. Petersburg Conservatory and then later at the Moscow Conservatory. However, the revolutionary ferment that was exacerbated by Russia's disastrous involvement in World War I caused Rachmaninov to flee the country with his family, eventually settling in the US. He continued to perform and compose extensively until cancer took his life in Beverly Hills in 1943. Many choral music lovers are most familiar with the Vespers, most accurately titled All-Night Vigil, because only a few of the 15 movements actually use the official Vespers text. Composed in just under 2 weeks in 1915, lightning speed, the Moscow Synodal Choir premiered the Vespers in a concert benefiting the Russian war effort in World War I. The work was warmly received and performed numerous times over the next few months. Although the premiere of the Vespers had militaristic overtones, it's safe to say that the music itself is anything but martial. For its composition, Rachmaninov turned to the music of the Russian Orthodox Church, drawing on its chant repository. 10 of the 15 movements quote Orthodox chant directly, but the remaining movements also use motifs from the chant to the extent that Rachmaninov termed them conscious counterfeits. At times, the music of the Vespers is simple and unpretentious, but at other times it bursts into these towering chords that seem to span the distance from earth to heaven and back. At all times, however, the effect is one of sublimity and wonder. It is no wonder then that the Vespers has retained its popularity despite being later banned by the Soviet authorities for many, many years because of that overt religiosity. Regardless, however, of the listener's religious outlook, Rachmaninoff's Vespers draws one into a realm beyond the mere existential, a region where time and worldly concerns are blunted and the spiritual resides. We hope that you enjoy this presentation.
Lynn McMorris was a longtime member of Chamber Singers of Iowa City who, upon retiring from her work at the University of Iowa, moved away with her husband Mel to blissful retirement in Missouri. Now, as a one-time resident of Missouri myself, I tried to talk her out of it, but ultimately was unsuccessful. Now, it's a joke. I loved living in Columbia, Missouri, where Lynn and Mel now live, and I have many fond memories of my time there. But it certainly was a loss for CSIC when Lynn finally hung up her choir folder in Iowa City. Mel, her husband, was a loyal supporter of CSIC, attending concerts, serving on the board, leading the front of house efforts. I may be missing something in there, but he did so much for us, and that the front of house is such a crucial part of our operation. So we were very sad to lose Mel to Missouri as well. They are both with me today to talk about Chamber Singers of Iowa City, memories of the Rachmaninoff concert, and simply to catch up. So thanks for joining me, Lynn and Mel McMorris.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's always great to see you guys and to catch up. You're a little bit too far away these days, but we make do. So Lynn, let's start with you actually. When did you begin, if you recall, singing in CSIC, and for how long did you sing? And then since your time in Chamber Singers, tell us about and kind of what you've been up to. I mean, I already mentioned that you went to Missouri, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing down south.
Now, the actual year that I started in chamber singers, I'm not certain. It's either 80, 83, I think it's 83. And I started the same year as Julie Noble and Marianne Zimmerman. So maybe Julie has a better memory. I'm not exactly certain, but I remember that I auditioned with Larry Munson up at City High, but he never directed a concert that I was in. I think Scott McCoy took over right away. And so I had Scott McCoy for a couple years, and then David came in 85, David Rail. And I was in Chamber Singers until 2013. So I'm thinking that's 30 years. Right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Okay. I probably that last concert that we did, which was the Creation, Haydn's Creation in May of 2013 was the last one I did. And that was leaving chamber singers was probably the hardest thing that I ever did. And we moved down to Warsaw, Missouri, which is on Truman Lake, thinking, okay, we're retired now, don't want to do anything, we'll relax, we'll catch fish, we'll do that kind of thing.
Right.
But we were missing a crucial element in our life. So in 2017, we kind of explored north here. We looked at Jeff City and then Columbia, and ended up here in Columbia in 2017. And it is very much like Iowa City. Opportunities abound. There's an arts world here. There's restaurants here. There's wonderful trails, good rec center. There's wonderful medical establishments. He's with the VA, so that's marvelous. They have a great VA system here. So, and good volunteer opportunities. So we've been down in Warsaw, we were still doing hospice volunteering. Up here, we tend now to be volunteering with the homeless. And that's one of the things that we're anxious to get started in after the pandemic is more under control. We've had to curb a lot of our things because of that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you chose the best place in Missouri. I love Columbia. I mean, it is just everything you say rings true. I mean, I've been gone from Columbia for 18 years now, and I know it's changed a lot since then, but even back then, I was there in the mid 90s till 02. And it was everything you said. I mean, the Katy Trail, you mentioned the hiking trails, and I mean, that's a gem right there. And anyone from Iowa, I would say, if you really, want to see a fantastic hiking trail, I mean, Iowa has some good ones too, but it's hard to beat the Katy Trail for sure. And then I remember the eating establishments were wonderful. I know they've just exploded exponentially since I was there as well. Absolutely. Yeah. So how about you, Mel? I mean, I know you're doing something down there. So please, we'd love to actually tell us what you did in Iowa City when you weren't working with chamber singers, obviously, and then what have you been doing down in Missouri?
Iowa City, I was a realtor, had been for 22 years at the point of deciding to retire. And actually, to fill in a little bit with what Lynn said, part of the thing that drew us to Missouri, other than getting away from some of the bone-chilling weather in Iowa, was the opportunity to live close to a buddy of mine, my best friend in Vietnam when I was there. So we were actually backyard neighbors to them for the 4 years that we lived there. And they were, they were difficult people to leave, but there were, as Lynn said, so many things that drew us away from Warsaw into Columbia. And then probably, as Lynn mentioned, that volunteer opportunities here that we wanted to take advantage of was a big factor in making this move to Columbia. And we've certainly not been disappointed by it. So along with the volunteering, I've always had a real strong interest in writing. And so I spend a couple of hours a day on my writing. and that occupies some of that downtime that the pandemic created. So that's what I've been doing here.
I guess maybe I was aware of your interest in writing. What are you writing about these days? What's can you tell us a little bit about that?
I finished a memoir that I had wanted to write about my 2-year career in the Army, including that 1 year I spent in Vietnam. So I finished that, and that was ended up being a pretty extensive bit of writing, 160 some pages that I did on that. But I had also started writing a novel and had taken classes through the University of Wisconsin. And so as I went through those classes, that certainly put together some better skills for writing. And so I've been working on that novel for, I don't know, probably how long?
Oh, forever.
Lynn thinks forever, but it's probably been maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. And that is, I've got a goal of having that finished by the end of this year, because I have already started another novel that I'm hoping to pick up by the first part of 2021.
And are you going to publish?
Oh, I would love to. It's just a question of how to go about doing that, following that system. We actually have, because in, what was it, 2003, there was the History Channel actually did a piece on the unit that I was with in Vietnam. And I met a producer as they were putting together that film. And I think that she'll be my contact person to see if it's possible to get this thing published.
My goodness. Wow. I look forward to hearing more about that as it progresses. I wish you the best of luck with that. That's really fascinating. Now, speaking of volunteering, you volunteered in Iowa City, you're volunteering down there. You sang in Iowa City, Lynn, but I understand both of you sing now in a church choir in Columbia. Is that correct?
That's right. We with the Methodist Church downtown, we have the opportunity to do that. So that was really kind of fun, because he was always the house manager, the person in the background. And so for him to have camaraderie with the bass section, it was really kind of, it was fun to see. So that's been a real boost for us, being able to do that together.
That's a universal trait of bass sections, is camaraderie. Every bass section I've ever been involved with.
I was going to ask you, David, in our bass section, it isn't that we don't know where we're at in the music. Sometimes we don't know which piece of music we're actually singing.
Oh, yes.
All right, moving on, everybody. That's great. I love it. Well, thank you for catching us up on everything that you've been doing since you left Iowa City. I think it's fantastic. And when I finally reach retirement, I hope I can find things that are as fulfilling as you both have found. Let's move on to let's go back to chamber singers now. Enough of the olden days, right? And what catching up, but well, actually, we still are in the olden days. But actually, this is for Lynn. What attracted you, Lynn, to join chamber singers originally, way back in 1983, and then you sang until 2013, 30 years. And so what you obviously kept coming back. What kept you coming back? So what got you there, and what kept you there?
Well, music has always been a passion of mine, always. And I was a music teacher for a while. And before I moved to Iowa City in 1980, I was part of a choral group there for a brief period of time. But I really wanted to get in with a group. And it took me that bit of time between 80 and 83, which I think it is, to find chamber singers. But I saw an article in the Press Citizen about the auditions. And so I went ahead and I auditioned, got in. The years were kind of tough. I served as a board member. I was a treasurer, a secretary, and a co-president with Barb Schonbacher. And we kind of had a hoot with that. But anyway, there were some kind of tough, being a board member is tough work. You know, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
really
it is.
very,
Mhm.
very difficult. But anyway, over the years, I think the exposure to the different kinds of music, it was always interesting. There was, and always a lot of work. It wasn't something that you came to a rehearsal once a week and then just put your music aside and went back. It's a lot of preparation. And you in particular always made it more difficult because you had lots of notes to be put into the scores. We had, I mean, that took hours to do. And then it, it was just the expectation that you wanted to put on this marvelous performance. And by the time you got to the performance, anything that was aggravating before in terms of preparation just disappeared because it was the spiritual uh, experience of all that music. We did some beautiful pieces. We were so fortunate. I just regret I wasn't able to go to New York with all of you, but that's what kept me. That's what kept me in it. And I would still be in it today if I were there. I hope if I made the audition. But part of me, in my tenure with chamber singers, I knew that every person reaches a point, whether they, I don't know how they realize it, that you really shouldn't be with the group anymore, that you're not really bringing into it what you should.
Mhm.
And so it was actually kind of a good thing for me to go at that time, because there's a lot required physically, mentally, everything, to really perform the way that you should, to be an integral part of the group. But I cherish every moment I had. I was bad. I was really hard to live with for a long time when we got down to Warsaw, because I missed it so much. Yeah.
Mel, this is
Yes.
true. You do not need to verify that, Mel. That's,
Thank you, David.
yeah, just yeah. We'll drop that where it is. So Lynn, you mentioned that you had so many wonderful pieces of music. Do you have any? Are there any pieces of music that really stand out to you that you recall, or performances?
Well, we did all the Bach festivals at the very beginning. I don't necessarily want to do some of them again, you know, like the B minor I've done several times, and St. Matthew and those kinds of things. That was a wonderful experience, but then we got beyond that into different music. I loved the Estonian music that you exposed us to. And in particular, as you noticed the poster in the background, we did the Estonian piece, and was it James Trusty?
Tusty, very close.
Yes. And then we got to meet him and did the thing at the Angler Theater that year.
Right. Yes.
That was fun. That was really a great thing. I remember one time we performed in the orchestra pit, we sang with the Joffrey, I think, in a Stravinsky piece or something. That's been a long time ago. We did that, and just the singing with Tim Stalter in the combined choirs when we would do that. But just I loved the Rachmaninov, though. That was one of my favorites. But Russian is one of the hardest languages I've ever sung in, ever. And that piece is particularly challenging. When I heard, of course, I got the music out and I got the CD out and I listened to it again, and I thought, I don't know if I could even do that now. You know, it's very demanding, and when you don't know that Russian and it just doesn't fall off your tongue. So you're watching all the markings and you're looking at the language and trying to get the emotions of the piece, because it's a praise piece for sure. So all of that together made that one of the more difficult things that I've ever done, I think.
I would totally agree. I would put the Rachmaninoff Vespers as up there as maybe the top 2 or 3 most challenging pieces I've prepared. Definitely, you know, and yeah, I've been doing this long enough now that I don't get very nervous anymore, but I definitely, you know, before a concert, but Rachmaninoff, that would be up there, you know, if, you know, that the needle is starting to, you know, the needle is heading over to the red for sure. I mean, you know, the engine may have been overheating a little bit, if I were to be completely honest. It was a great challenge. And this is actually a great segue to talk about that concert as well. Do you definitely the Russian? Absolutely. That was, that's half the battle in that piece, right? Is the language. It's just we don't sing in that language, or I guess Old Church Slavonic, but we don't sing in that we don't sing those words here in the United States. Rarely ever. And so that was definitely half the battle. But do you have any other memories you want to share of that concert, of the music? It could be of the music, it could be of rehearsals, it could be the performance itself.
Well, I quite frankly don't remember how we put that together. I'll never know, because the rhythm, I mean, it's so lush, and it's so just the lines move in different ways. It's almost chant-like in some respects, and just thick with harmonies and that are different. I mean, it is so Russian sounding, that I just love that. I think it must have taken forever for us to get to a point where we felt like we could even put the piece together and think in terms of the line, where it should go. All of those things fell into place. And I listened to that recording and I thought, my gosh, we did such a good job on that. But in light of that, we had a population that really appealed to in Iowa City. That was at First Pres. And
Correct.
Mel was the house manager at that concert. And do you recall what happened?
Oh, well, for one thing, as a lead-in, I remember how much work it took to prepare that.
Oh, yeah.
How much extra time you put in at home preparing for that. And then you arrive at the concert and you don't know, although there was a tremendous following for chamber singers at that time, you didn't know if, because this was such a specialty kind of piece, whether there would be a big crowd or relatively small, or where it would fit in. And my gosh, the people started arriving and didn't quit arriving. In fact, I think we even held the concert up for just a few minutes, but we ended up putting chair after chair, not just at the back of the church, but into kind of the more informal meeting hall that's a part of that church. It ended up being a huge crowd there. But what I remember most about it is that it was an appreciative crowd. I think you had put in so much time and preparation for that you didn't hear any kind of grumbling about, oh, they missed that word or they missed that phrasing. There wasn't anything like that. It was just a crowd that really enjoyed that music.
It was amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely the memory I share too, is coming out from the back of the chancel area, when we would enter from that back corner at the front of the church and coming out and just seeing, like, I seem to remember, if the vestibule area is empty, there's a lot of sunlight that comes through and you can see that. But I just have this strong memory of, you couldn't even see the sunlight. It was just full of people back behind in the vestibule area, and like you said, even spilling off into that kind of fellowship area. And I think that was probably our best attended concert we've ever had. I mean, we could have done 2 performances of that easily. It may have killed us, but we could have done
it. Well, that one, and when we did the Messiah out at St. Pat's, that was well attended.
Yes,
too.
Right. Yeah. The St. Pat's, I would say, would be easily our most attended, because that was such a huge space. I think we had over 900 people at that. But and I think, Mel, you were working that one too. That's a whole nother, I'm sure, a battle story there.
You're right.
A war story there. But yes, that's a whole nother one. But in terms of at First Pres, I think that was easily the highest attendance we had at that church. I think maybe the sanctuary only held maybe a couple hundred, maybe a little over that at capacity, but we were well beyond that. So. Yeah, absolutely. So anything else about the concert or the music itself? I totally find myself, agreeing and remembering those same things you talked about. I think of the concert, I always think of any concert preparation as kind of a hill or a mountain. And, depending on the music, it's either a relatively short hill, or, it's not a steep incline. The incline changes, the altitude changes. But that one was maybe altitude and incline. That was, you're exactly right. I think it took us, maybe Mel, you mentioned that you suspected it took us longer, and it did. I felt that, and that's part of what maybe made, kind of got my needle over to the red a little bit, in terms of just being a little more nervous than usual, is that it was such a climb and a lift with language, harmonies. It was all a cappella. It's 15 movements
Yes,
of
I
all
know.
a cappella. There's no help, and then in some places, the music splits like into a really high degree. So not just like 2 sopranos, 2 altos, 2 tenors, 2 basses, but sometimes 3, 3, 3, and 3. There may have even been a 4 in there at one point. So it was, we're talking just a small handful of people sometimes singing one little part.
I know, and I sang alto in that one. I'd been a soprano for a number of years and then switched to alto. And I think that's probably one of the most interesting alto parts I've ever done. I mean, because it was so all over the place. It wasn't like just one little note that you sang for a long period of time, but there was attention to every voice. There was nothing stagnant about any part, and the basses weren't just doing boom, boom, boom. Mel was trying to follow along in the music, and I'd have to point and say, "We're right there. We're right there." So it's difficult to follow that piece because the tempos are kind of mixed up in that as well. When I wish I could remember you conducting that, because you must have done a remarkable job, because it came off as we were together. But that was a hard one to pull together, and you didn't even have an orchestra to deal with. That's the funny part of the whole thing.
Right. Go ahead, Mel.
Well, just to interject, that one of the things that I recall from that concert is that it was so well done that you didn't realize at times that there were no musical instruments accompanying it. It was just so smoothly put together that you didn't miss the orchestra. You didn't sense that there was no orchestra there.
Well, I do recall from all the years that you were with the group, one of the things that you pointed out was that not every group was ready to do a piece a cappella. And I think that you just made the decision that this particular year we could do that kind of thing with the personnel that we had to work with, and it was stunning. It was just, because I've since done some a cappella things that I wish I hadn't done, but
well, I have to give credit where credit's due, and maybe some blame as well. And the blame is in jest, of course. But Carol Christensen was the president of the board at the time. And she's the one back in the spring prior, because this was a November concert, back in the spring prior, when we were planning for the next season, she's the one that put it in my mind to consider the Rachmaninov. And I remember having great trepidation about, a lot of hesitation about this, thinking, I don't know. And even as we started rehearsals, I still didn't quite know if I'd done the right thing. But boy, I appreciated her putting the idea in my mind and encouraging. And then when it came to the, in final analysis, and ultimately it was a great success. And it was one of the times I've been most proud of chamber singers, was rising to that occasion. Maybe the hard, for the singers, maybe the most challenging concert of my tenure, pound for pound.
I didn't know that thing about Carol, bless her heart. I'm glad that she did that. Yeah. But another blame issue here, when I listened to you and David Rail speaking, you were talking about when you auditioned, and I remember your audition. I was there, and one of the big things was that David Rail had recommended you highly. Yeah, I know. But it was your own merits that got you the position. And thank God, I really so happy that you came on board because you really took chamber singers in a wonderful direction.
Well, thank you. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's really what it comes down to. So
well, thank you, David Rail, for that.
yeah, so yes, I will be eternally grateful to him. Absolutely. I try to tell him that every time I talk to him, but yeah, so
I miss him. I'd like to see him.
Oh yeah, I trying to think. I usually see him every 2 years at our national choral conferences, but our next one, this coming March is virtual, so I'll miss him this time around.
Oh,
but
right. Well, I remember that
hopefully.
after he left Chamber Singers and was doing some things, well, maybe it was even while when he was over at St. Ambrose, and he would do an opera in the park, and he did the magic flute. And we went over there and saw that. And then I think he did a Schumann thing, and we saw that. So we followed him. We were like a little fan club of David Rail.
Yeah.
So.
Understandable. Yeah, absolutely. And well deserved for sure. So are there, I think you've kind of talked a little bit about this, maybe not. I think you kind of mentioned it, but are there any just aspects of chamber singers that you find yourself missing even today?
Oh, golly. Well, the camaraderie there, I mean, in terms of keeping in touch with, I'm on social media with a lot of the chamber singers, and I still long for that feeling because there's nothing like being a part of a group like that. And the funny little things that happen along the way, you know, we were talking before this started about the concert that we did where the lights went off and there was a tornado warning, and we waited and Mel was mentioning to me that what was it he said to the audience?
Well, I remember, I think it might have been after the lights went out twice that you just stopped everything and you said, "We haven't memorized this."
Is that what I said? I can't remember.
Yes.
I remember that concert. I mean, that's definitely memorable for sure.
No, but we shared so many things. I think that everybody in your tenure with chamber singers, you're going through so much life stuff, and so you get to share with the other members of the group, and you get so close that it's really like a family. And to share the special music with these people is unlike anything else you can do with another human being. It's just marvelous. And so do I miss chamber singers? 100%. But I can't say that I'd probably make the auditions these days, but I'd have to work at that.
Well, it's beautifully said, but don't sell yourself short.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, but that was really beautifully said. Absolutely. Do either of you have any messages for anyone back in Iowa City?
In this day and age, I would say where you kind of feel separated from people right now. So the feelings that you can get, your memories of all of those things stay with you. But to all those people, just stay strong. Stay strong. We'll get through all the stuff we're going through right now, and hopefully we'll be able to get up there and see a concert. I couldn't even think about seeing a concert when I wasn't with you for a while because it would be too painful. Besides that, we have so much family up there that we never get the time to do anything but see family. But I miss each and every one.
Well, you should definitely. Definitely, the invitation is out there. You know, even on a Monday night, you know, when things get back to normal. Yeah, you're more than welcome to stop by anytime. Mel, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't know if I can add anything to what Lynn said because she said it so well, but those were just in many ways very, very special days, that association with chamber singers, and particularly with you. I've told you before that I've never ever done something like that, of being house manager with a conductor that was so level all the time, because I knew you were under stress at times, but you never you kept it well inside yourself and didn't put that on somebody else. And I always appreciated that.
Thank you. Well, I just, they always say, just, tamp it down as tight as you can, tighten the, just keep on tamping, that's my policy. But thank you. That's I try to be so.
Good.
Yeah. Well, it was it was really so wonderful here to just have this time to talk, to catch up with both of you, to have this conversation. And please know that you are missed here in Iowa City. I think I've told you that before. And you're always welcome to move back, of course. And definitely next time you're passing through, definitely let us know. And you're again more than welcome to stop by anytime to a rehearsal, a concert, and I hope that day comes soon. When we can get back to rehearsals and traveling freely and so forth. So, with that, I think we can sign off. And I just want to say thanks again and take care down in Missouri. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, David.
I want to welcome Michala Martin to the discussion here in the Chamber Singers of Iowa City studio. Michala joined CSIC in the fall of 2008, and the Rachmaninov Vespers concert was her very first with the choir, so she brings a unique perspective. So welcome, Michala.
Thank you.
Really great to have you. Let's jump into some questions I drew up for you that I think our viewers / listeners would love to hear from you. So I guess first of all, a little bit of background about you. So for the people who don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and what do you do when you're not singing with CSIC? I know, but I imagine many don't. So fill us in, please.
You bet. I am a high school choir teacher in Vinton, Iowa. So I am dedicated to the Chamber Singers of Iowa City. I drive an hour every Monday when we're in session. So, and when I started with Chamber Singers, when this concert took place, I was living in Wapello. So I was still driving an hour to be part of the Chamber Singers. So yeah, it has, that's what I do in my time away from chamber singers, I guess, is I am a public school teacher.
That's amazing. I mean, the drive, I mean, you were one of the people who live the farthest away. I think we have someone from Fairfield that may be a little farther, but just it's simply amazing, especially in the dark winter months when the roads can be a little iffy. And yeah, I don't know, do you listen to podcasts? Do you listen to the radio? What do you do?
I do now, just in the past few years. That's definitely a nice break. Music doesn't tend to keep me awake, funny enough. So podcasts have been very nice for the longish drives, especially at night. So.
You know, that's an interesting thing, and this is a whole nother topic, but I just think of, you know, over the years, you probably had the same thing. You know, you'll have, when you tell people, you know, what you do for a living and that you say you're in music, and then they say, oh, you must listen to music all the time. And I don't know about you, but it's not really the case for me. It's like, once I'm done with work, I want to listen to the spoken word podcasts, whatever. And podcasts have just been an amazing, you know, I mean, I know they've been around for several years now, but the whole on demand, you know, listening to interesting program is great. Yep. But well, I'm glad the podcasts keep you awake as you drive down those dark Iowa roads, especially in the winter, and just the dedication of doing that. So you're at Vinton High School.
Yep.
So can you tell our people who are with us just like how many singers do you work with? You know, what's Vinton like? I think most people who are in Iowa probably have heard of Vinton, but it's out kind of west of Cedar Rapids.
Yep, west, just a smidge north of Cedar Rapids. We are a 3A school. If you're from Iowa, you know what that means. But we are kind of right in the middle to small end of 3A. Our class sizes are about 100 to 150, right in there. So pretty small classes. I have 2 curricular choirs. I have a all treble choir and then a mixed concert choir. And right now, just with COVID and everything, our numbers are definitely less than in former years. But I usually have a total of anywhere from 100 to 150 students.
Oh, that's wonderful. And certainly I know something of your work. I've been out to visit you a number of times over the years, and I'm always just so impressed with not only the singers, just their singing, but also, and the work you do with them, but also just their attitude. I mean, you know, whatever you're doing is just, I mean, they are so, like, whenever I've been out with your singers, they are just so like serious, and they're like totally tuned in.
Yeah.
It's really quite awesome and amazing.
They do behave well for guests, but they're also just really, they're also just really good kids. We do. I mean, I like them so much. My students are great, and we have really good relationships, I think. And that's a conscious effort, but I think also it's just organic. They feel that, you know, I care about them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for kind of bringing us up to speed on what you do outside of CSIC. So, you know, I already mentioned that the Rachmaninov Vespers was the first concert that you ever sang with CSIC, and so I thought you'd just be a really great person to speak to about this. You probably have something of a unique perspective to share compared to singers who had maybe been in the group for many years before. So I guess first question I would have, and that would connected to that, is do you remember what drew you to the choir back in 2008? I know that was all ancient history, I get that, but I'm just curious if you remember anything about kind of how you find out about it, and once you started, why did you not leave? I mean, what kept you here?
Totally. I actually remember it very well. I had already been teaching for 2 years, and I had been in choir since 7th grade. And when I started teaching, I was in Wapello, and there wasn't a community choir around there close by. And so for the first 2 years, I was kind of just, trying to get my head above water as a first year teacher. But then that 3rd year, I missed singing so much. And it's just not at all the same being the conductor, being the director. And so I needed that creative outlet for myself. And I went to church as a kid with Bev Tyree, who had been in Chamber Singers. I don't know if she was ever with you or if that was even before you.
Before my time.
Yeah. And that was, and I knew she had sung with them. My mom pointed that out to me because I was just kind of dying for a choir to sing with. And then I found the information, and I don't know how it happened after that, but I'm sure I just signed up for auditions and came. So
absolutely. Well, that all sounds. I remember your time, you being in Wapello at the time.
Yep.
And I remember, that you were, because you're an Iowa City native.
I am. Yeah.
Right. And you went to West High. So going back to the Rachmaninoff performance in particular, do you have any specific memories that are connected to either the performance and or the rehearsals and or the people, whether it's your fellow singers, that type of thing?
Well, my kind of overall memory of this piece, the lasting kind of impression that it leaves is, first of all, how challenging it was. Because I had never sung in Church Slavonic before. I think I had maybe sung the Bogorodice Dievo, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So now, as an adult who had gone through all the diction classes and everything, it was really fascinating to me to learn how to sing that language. It's not easy. So I remember that part vividly. And then also the fact that it was all a cappella, this multi-movement work that this community choir that I just started singing with did it all a cappella. And I don't believe we were given a pitch except for the starting pitch. At least that's my memory, but I was just so impressed and challenged, and it was really refreshing to be challenged by choral music again. Because that's definitely something, and I think that's probably, going back to your last question, I think that's probably what has kept me in. We sing a different level of music than high school choir music, and so if that's my whole world with choir, just the high school level of choir, I don't get that enrichment for myself. So I think that kind of all ties in there a little bit. It was very challenging entrance into the group, and I think we kind of killed it. And yeah, it just had me from there.
Yeah, it was so the Church Slavonic, that was a first for me as well. I mean, you sing Bogorodice Dievo, or as some people know it, Ave Maria. I mean, if they do the Latin translation of it. But that's the most famous movement by far, obviously, and it's published separately, and choirs around the world do it all the time, and they keep doing it because great music never goes out of style, right?
It's beautiful.
But that would have been my my only experience with Church Slavonic before then as well. And so going from that movement, one movement, to 15 movements of the language was really daunting. I seem to remember making recordings, like audio recordings of the
Oh yeah.
of me pronouncing the language, or maybe it was, I did have the person I wanted to thank who helped me with it was Oleg Timofeyev, who is an Iowa City professional musician, and so he is Russian is his original language, and he was quick to point out that we were not singing in modern Russian per se, and so just that that whole process of, okay, we're singing Russian kind of, but it's not a modern version, and so that whole challenge was, I met with him once or twice at least, and just sat down for a long period of time, and he went through, and I took copious notes. I think I maybe even took a little recorder with me to record him saying, saying each word, each phrase, and then just conveying that to the choir. I mean, I can only imagine as much work as it was for me as a professional musician, and you as well with your professional training. Most of our singers and chamber singers are not musicians by trade, and so
they don't know IPA.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I was able to sit down with and do the International Phonetic Alphabet for every sound in there, and which helped greatly. But for so many singers, that was a big mountain to climb, and I just remember it being first of all surprising that I mean, not that I had low expectations, but that they certainly surpassed. If I would have had low expectations, we would not have done the piece. There we go.
Right.
But just for them to surpass it as they did was really quite amazing. So totally agree. And the whole, it's hard for me to remember whether we gave pitches between movements. So I'm going to take your word for it, and it makes it sound more impressive. It makes it sound much more impressive.
There might have been one or two later on that we just didn't get, but I remember distinctly practicing those transitions just over and over, because there were a couple that were really challenging.
So. Absolutely. So the Church Slavonic and the fact that you mentioned it already, that it's all a cappella, 15 movements of, it's just, the choir's just out there. And then also there's a lot of division in each part. So it's not just soprano, alto, tenor, bass, but it's two parts. And in some places it's like 3 soprano parts, 3 bass parts. And so, you just think about, it's like having a football team with 4 positions, right? And then if in a regular choir, let's say there's four positions in the football field, and you get to put X number of people, your bench for each position is pretty deep. But then when you have 8 positions or 12 positions or whatever, then, you're really, there was only on some of those places, if I remember correctly, there was maybe only 3 or 4 people on that part for that moment. Yeah. So kudos to all of you for making that work and making it work so well. So do you have any favorite movements of the Vespers? I mean, we've talked about Bogoroditse, and maybe that is your favorite, but and if it is, hey, it's one of mine too. But I'm just curious if you.
It's a beautiful piece. I do know. It's been so long ago, and even if I looked at any book or anything, I don't know the titles of the pieces of each of the movements anymore. It seems to me like there was one favorite in the beginning, like maybe movement 3, and then one toward the end. Do you have any recollection of where Bogoroditse sat?
Yeah, Bogoroditse would be number 6 out of 15.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was before or after that, but
okay. All right. Yeah, I can't remember the actual specifics anymore. I wish I would have dug back into that, because I know there were a couple that were just fun. Like Bogoroditse is just so rich and lush Um, but then there were a couple other, at least one that I'm remembering that had more life to it and was really challenging, diction wise, I think. But that's all the
Yeah.
more detail I have.
Well, it's interesting for me as well. I mean, it's 15 movements, and you could on the one hand say the music all. I wouldn't say it doesn't sound the same, but it like there's so much similarity. It's a very unified piece in terms of just the style. I mean, you're not. It's not like fast movement, slow movement, fast movement, slow movement. It's all it's just a continuous wave of 15 movements of just absolutely gorgeous music, lush,
And it's
rich.
music.
Pardon?
So it's worship music too. So
Yeah.
it's I mean, it's very emotional, I guess. It just feels really emotional.
Yes, right. Yeah, I think it has those moments of just very. It's almost just simplicity. Just very mild, incredibly simple. But then it'll just erupt into these tall chords, with basses down in below the basement, and sopranos kind of up above the roof line, and it's really just it's those waves of sound.
Yeah.
It's almost like the ocean in a way.
Totally.
Like a big tide coming in. That type of thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of an image that comes to me when I think of that piece. Yeah, absolutely. So since 2008, when you joined, you've really sung with CSIC pretty much the whole time. I mean, I know when you went back for your master's at Nebraska, you were gone for a couple years.
2 years.
Couple years, right? Yeah. But then I was thrilled when you came back. I was like, yes. So I guess you've already kind of talked a little bit about it. I don't know if you want to add anything more to it, but I'm curious about what keeps you coming back to CSIC.
Sure.
You mentioned the challenge.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm just curious about what you think the choir's role is in this part of the country, this corner of the state.
Okay. Well, yeah, I honestly, the year that I came back to chamber singers after I went to grad school was the only time I lived close. Because for that first year after I came back, I was actually living in Iowa City and commuting to my new job in North Cedar at North Cedar Schools, which is along Highway 30. And so I was commuting up there. That was an hour drive to school every day that I was making instead of an hour drive once a week to chamber singers. Maybe not the best trade-off, but yeah, that was really nice. It just was at least a more comfortable drive to chamber singers. That made it easy. And then even the year after that, I was only living, I think, a half an hour away. So those 2 years were the easiest as in terms of commuting to chamber singers. But I mean, in general, it's a lot, kind of the level of music, but also just having that kind of creative outlet. Just it's not enough for me to just be a director. I'm also a singer. And so I need that in my life. And
that's
why I keep doing it.
That's great. It's great to hear. Great to hear. Boy, and yeah, it's something we hope we get to do again soon. Yes. So I think we can wrap it up, but I just want to thank you so much for talking to me today about chamber singers, about your kind of what you do, both in chamber singers and outside of chamber singers. I should mention that you're a member of our board, our illustrious board. We shouldn't go without saying that. And so the amount of work you put in to the group goes well beyond singing, well beyond. And I know I'm very grateful for it, and I know I speak for the whole membership and the rest of the board as well. So I mean it's really just a great blessing for us to have you as part of both the board and as a singer.
Well, it goes both ways. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about that, because it really does go both ways. It's so not just important for me creatively and professionally, but I mean, making friendships. You and I have become close professionally and just relationally. And so, and the same with many other members of the board and choir. And it's just a really fulfilling group to be a part of in general. And obviously I wouldn't continue driving an hour both ways if I didn't enjoy being part of the group. So it's, yeah. It's an important part of my life.
Well, it's that's great to hear, and I think that is the common thread for all of us who sing in chamber singers or work or in chamber singers. And I think you know, I was just, while you were talking right there, I was thinking we have to get together again sometime soon. It's been since March since we've been talking via screen since March, and so we just need to get back to rehearsing together again in person, and you know, getting kind of reforging the real connections that we've had, and we look forward to doing that as soon as possible.
Yeah, indefinitely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, and and appreciate it, and have a great rest of the fall, and happy Thanksgiving in advance.
Indeed. Yes, to you too.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Thanks, David.